it just us so far, Jen? Or is that Melanie?
Can you see me? Because I can't see myself on the screen, and that's how I had some problems with the first meeting. I can't hear you now.
Because I was muted.
Oh, thank God it wasn't something at my end. So can you?
No, I can't see your face. I just see a black square with London Police Services Board.
See me now?
I see you.
You were so efficient this morning. Oh my goodness. Ahead of schedule. That's like board administrator dream come true.
Well,
My prayers paid off.
they weren't too chatty today, so that's okay.
At the first meeting, I think they're just getting warmed up. You're lucky you're the first of the day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It probably gets like this, and then towards the end of the day, they're a little faster.
Yeah, maybe. Nobody wanted to second anything. That's what was frustrating. Communications center. I've got my other laptop over here.
Okay.
With all my agendas open and extra reports and all that. Here we are.
Hello, kids.
Hi.
I'm so sorry about that, Jennifer. I must have been reading it, which is where I got the idea. But sometimes I read things and later think, God, I've got this great idea.
Well, I love to hear that you're on page with it. That's exciting to me.
Well, that's on the public agenda of the main board meeting?
No, that's actually in Vimo, and it's not that it's so secretive, but I just thought it doesn't really involve the chiefs and deputies, but you know.
Oh, is it in your verbal update, Jen?
No, there's a memo.
Yeah, I did see the memo. I went back and saw it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, written.
I sent it to you just now, but you mean you did see it in the agenda, right? Like in the You remember seeing it too, Maureen, because I sent it out to just the chairs of the committees.
So I remember talking about it.
Yeah, a while back. Like, and
I thought it was a fabulous idea. Yeah, but it was. So when Megan brought it up, it was like this foggy deja vu.
Right.
I know somebody brought that up, and I was like, that's an excellent idea.
At least you didn't do what I did and say, this is my great idea. Like you could have said, hey, I've got a great idea.
I don't know. Seriously, this is in Vimo on the agenda? Additional business minutes. I've missed it. So it'll be like
Vimo number 4. Vimo 4.
Vimo 4.
Next meeting.
Okay.
And you've basically
public committee meetings. Okay.
You've basically read it before in the form of an email that I basically copied into the memo.
Yes, and I just thought
old news for you. You're ahead of the curve.
Was kind of like some of the other discussions we had today. I was like, oh yeah, I remember talking about that. 10:30. We got Allie, we got Megan, we got Susan. We're all here. Hail, hail. And it's 10:30. So is everybody ready? Yep. All good? Okay. I'll call the public meeting to order. I will check to see if there are any conflicts on the public agenda. Seeing none, I will go to introduction of new business. So we do have the matter that came forward from the confidential session, which is the public consultations around the complement of new officers. And then we also are bringing forward a report, a memo that came to us in camera from Deputy Chief Betts on the officer name badge on uniform matter. So I will look for a motion to add these two items of new business I'll also first check to see if any members have new business to add. Seeing none, so can I get a motion to add these 2 items to this public agenda? Moved by Susan, thank you. Seconded by Megan. All those in favor? Excellent, that motion carries. Next, we have the minutes of the March 24th public meeting of the Governance Committee. Can I get a motion that the Governance Committee approves as presented the minutes of the March meeting? And of course, if anybody does have, so moved by Megan, seconded by Ali. Any concerns or questions about these minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that motion carries. Wonderful. So I do have some updates from the in-camera meeting we had earlier today. We approved the in-camera minutes from the March 24th meeting. We dealt with some confidential legal matters and invoices. We dealt with an appeal of a complaint that was before the board. And there were some memorandums of agreement and related financial matters that also were dealt with. And some policy matter discussions. The policy will become public in the future, so stay tuned on that. Are those the only updates I have there, Jen? Yep, okay. So I'll look for a motion that the Governance Committee receives my verbal update related to the matters discussed earlier in today's in-camera meeting of the Governance Committee. Moved by Megan, thank you, seconded by Susan. All those in favor? Okay, that motion carries. New business. So first up, this was introduced in the in-camera meeting and referred to this public meeting. This was an added item to the agenda, and it relates to the following 3 motions that were approved at the April board meeting pertaining to the Chief's Patrol Enhancements Memo. And the motions that we passed in April were whereas the Ontario regulation adequacy, do I have to read all of that? I don't have to read all of that. It's recommended that the board's Finance and Administration Committee work with LPS administration in consultation with City Finance to formulate a plan to implement in a staged manner 52 new frontline positions to the LPS complement, and that the plan be presented to the board by September. Second part of the motion is that the board aggressively pursues assessment growth funding as available and directs LPS administration to develop a budget amendment for the 2023 budget year to add additional frontline positions to the LPS complement and present that budget amendment to the board at or before its September meeting. Also, that the board continues to assess on an ongoing basis the resourcing needs of the London Police Service, including public consultation to engage the public for feedback. And 3, that the board direct Chief Williams and board chair Toth to draft a joint media statement related to the LPS patrol enhancement. So that's what was passed in April. This matter was brought up, the concept of the public consultations came up because Chair Toth did want to discuss that. So I will turn it over to you, Chair Toth.
Thank you, Chair Cassidy. So yes, I was the one who asked for this specifically to be put on the agenda today. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, the decision to have those public consultations and engage the public for feedback was a decision that was initially made in camera. So there was no public awareness. I mentioned it in media, but I wanted to formalize that we are having those public consultations in public sessions so that the public is actually aware that that is something that the board had decided to do. Number one. Number two, there does seem to be some confusion about when that consultation was happening. My understanding was that it was going to start right away. I gather that some people were thinking that it would just take place as part of the normal business engagement or the business strategy. The reason that for me didn't make sense was because we already engaged the public. So when the board specifically passed a motion highlighting public engagement, my assumption was that we would only do that if we were doing a separate process from our usual public consultation, which we always have when we're putting together what our strategies are going to be, what our goals are going to be, and all of everything that goes with the business report. So I know that the board has already very clearly shown their support for the 52 officers. That's not in question, but I do think that there is never not a good opportunity to engage the public and just get their feedback. Obviously, there's a report coming back to us in September. Why not time some of that feedback with that report? I don't think that there's ever any downside, and there's only ever upside to just engaging the public, seeing where they're at. And certainly to this point, a lot of the public feedback has been, we're waiting too long. So let's hear from the public. Let's give them that opportunity to come forward and talk to us. And I think, if nothing else, it's part of our obligations as a board to solicit that kind of feedback. So I know it's a lot of work, but I think we could set up a plan where there's preliminary consultations before September, and then a longer, more in-depth consultation on an ongoing basis, tied again to the business plan. So that would be what I would support, but I leave that to discussion.
Okay. I'll go to you, Megan, and then Ali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if the chief could just speak to that. I'm trying to sort of reconcile what I thought had happened with sort of what the discussion is now. I didn't think we would be having, in fact, I thought there was a kind of a mention that there wouldn't be any time to do public consultations leading up to sort of over the summer because of vacation schedules and things. So I'm just trying to figure out where we're at, Steve, and what maybe I've lost in this. I'm just a little confused.
Chief Williams?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So my understanding was we certainly did talk about public consultations during the conversation about the addition of the officers, and the motion passed to pursue those staffing enhancements. We've typically done a round of public consultations through various means, in-person surveys, etc., at the beginning of the business plan process. And that's now in sync with the budget process. So that would be, normally it would be next year, early next year. Trish may have a better idea on the timelines for that. That's under her area. But having said that, you know, if the board were to arrange public consultations over the course of the summer and into the early fall, we could certainly participate, but it is very difficult this time of year with vacation and all that. And I don't know what would change with that in terms of what we are going to present the board with in September. I think I've said pretty strongly we need this staffing, and I will be pursuing the staffing. So the board will be receiving something in September, and I'm not sure what would change with relation to that particular piece of our operations. Certainly there could be public consultations that inform other things with the business plan and, you know, the 4-year plan and all that. You know, it's really the board's decision. If you choose to arrange public consultations over the next few months, then that's the board's decision, obviously, and we'd participate to answer any questions if required.
So I do appreciate public consultation. I think it's really important, but I never like to see public consultation presented as kind of something that has to be done, or tokenism, or out of place. And I worry about the summer because I know so many people are away. And part of the issue I have is that I don't know about everybody else, but I haven't had anybody provide any negative feedback around provision of the new police officers. You know, and I spent a lot of time at the hospital recently, and doctors and people I knew from up there would come by and say, wow, you know, all these police officers, you know, what are we going to do with them? And I said, well, they are not all coming next year. No, we know that, but how many each year? And so I don't know if it's necessary to do a separate consultation outside of the budget process. That's just how I'm feeling. And also I do feel that now that people are really getting out finally and going to cottages and doing those things again, I'm not very convinced that public consultations over the summer would see a lot of public at them, that's all. So, I mean, my preference would be to, you know, continue to be firm that this is what the board has, you know, voted to do, and we will have consultations in 2023, as we would anyway around budget consultations.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Ali, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So a couple quick points. It almost seems inverted to me. There was a motion before the board last month with regards to this matter and what we were going to do or recommend. Unless I'm missing something, you know, wouldn't the public consultation or public input precede that decision and not come afterwards? My second point is if the discussion was, well, we should have public input because there's no mechanism that exists to provide public input, then I think that might be worthy of consideration. But my understanding, unless I'm wrong, is that we already have a mechanism that exists through the normal, you know, budget process, business plan process that allows and facilitates for public feedback on this. So unless there's some extenuating or differentiating merits to consider this one item standalone as different for public input, I would say that we already have a process in place that the public could weigh in on that. And then, I mean, the one thing I will say is, I don't know who use the word tokenism. I don't ever think that public input is tokenism. I think public input should always be encouraged and received and considered. But I just think that that mechanism already exists. And again, for me, we already passed the motion. And so if we were going to do some public input, I feel like it would have had merit to help the board decide whether they wanted to pass the motion or not at that time, not after the fact. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ali. I'm gonna go to Deputy Chief McIntyre just to hear what she might have to add to that, and then I'm gonna go to you, Councillor Helmer, and welcome to the Governance Committee.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify if it helps the board as you try to inform a decision on this. So just note, so last month I submitted that chart, which I just pulled up just to help us here. Our obviously strategic planning process is well underway. We know that in this fall, we will have public consultations as it relates to the strategic business planning cycle. So our budget now is aligned with our business planning cycle. So those two run in succession, so which is good. We also are doing a third-party contracted out public needs survey. So that's in addition. So you're going to see those run this fall, public needs, our consultations. You're going to see a third-party contracted out to do additional public needs survey. Our internal needs survey process has already started. We have to start that well in advance in our in-service training. But I just kind of align that for you. So hopefully it helps you inform a decision. But just for your awareness, that whole chart that our lovely Joan Atchison prepared, she's on this call, was last month.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Chief. Okay, go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you. So in my mind, there's a couple of things that maybe need to be clarified. One is we haven't made a final decision about the budgets, either the budget for next year or the budgets for future years. And what we have done is direct administration to come back with a multi-year plan for the one and an amendment for next year, both in September. And so we're going to make future decisions about next year's budget, which we can recommend to council. And then even later, we'll make future decisions about what's going to happen in those later years in the next multi-year budget cycle. So I guess I just want to clarify that we haven't actually made some kind of final decision on staffing or the budget for 2023. What we've done is direct an amendment for next year and a plan for a multi-year approach to adding additional officers. So that's the first thing I say. I think the thing that is requiring some attention in terms of engaging the public is the amendment for 2023, because I think for the multi-year plan, that's very well aligned with the multi-year budget, overall business planning process. We have an existing public engagement process for that, which Deputy Chief McIntyre just helpfully reminded us when that's starting and how it's going to proceed. And I think that covers off everything that's needed for the multi-year plan. You know, what's going to happen in the future. You know, there will be a report back about that in September. But there won't be a final decision until we actually deal with the multi-year budget, which is out in the future. And for me, at least, you know, I won't even be on the board when that is finally dealt with. The budget amendment, which will be coming forward in September as well for the 2023 year, right? And we haven't had a lot of these over the course of the multi-year budget process with the city from LPS, but we do have a direction to consider one in September. And I think that's one where, just as we did with the overall multi-year budget, we need to have some kind of public meeting where we get feedback from the public. You know, we have a finance administration committee for this reason to deal with budget issues. And so I think at the very least, we should have a committee meeting or perhaps a full board meeting that we hear from the public about the amendment that's being proposed. How far in advance we, you know, share that and give people a chance to look at it before they come to the meeting, I think is maybe what we should be talking about now. And I don't think, you know, doing something in July is a great time of year, but potentially there's some opportunity to, you know, release it early in September, have a public meeting where we could hear from the public about what they think about the budget amendment, and then make a decision as a board about how we want to proceed with the budget amendment. The details of which, you know, we haven't dealt with yet, right? So we have a direction to have the budget amendment come forward. So I don't think it's out of order, as Ali kind of raised, like it seems kind of backwards. I think it's actually in the correct order. We've directed administration to come back with a future report. We should engage the public on the budget as we did when we developed the multi-year budget. And I don't think we need to do anything for the future multi-year budget and the future business plan beyond what's already outlined in terms of engaging the public. That's a really big undertaking, and it's gonna engage a lot of people in understanding what the needs are, you know, what they think about policing, what direction they think we should be going in, not just money-wise, but in terms of how that service is being delivered in the community. I think that's a really comprehensive process, and it's on the right timeline now. So I would support some kind of public engagement specifically on the amendment for 2023, because I think that's the one that is kind of new and doesn't really have a public engagement process identified yet beyond what we would have done for the multi-year budget last time. Since we're looking at changing it, I think it makes sense to have, at the very least, another public meeting about that budget amendment once it's been made public.
Thanks. Okay, Megan?
So just to clarify, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, just to clarify, Jesse is proposing that nothing go on right now, but as part of the 2023 budget, we make sure there's a public participation meeting or public input with respect to the amendment. Is that right?
Yes.
So nothing's happening until 2023. So we're not having to try to catch up and make things happen right now.
So Jesse, so as the motion from the board was the 3 parts, and one dealt specifically with the 52 officers, part 2 dealt with aggressively pursuing an assessment growth to develop a budget amendment for the 2023 budget to add additional frontline positions. So is that part of the motion that Jesse believes we should do some public engagement on prior to that going forward to council? Jesse, I saw your hand up. Do you want to provide your own clarification in addition?
Yeah, sorry that I mixed things up for people, but you know, the 2023 budget will be decided in the fall of this year, right? We're going to decide what it's going to be. We're going to propose an amendment to council. Eventually, council is going to make a decision about what the 2023 budget is going to look like. Presuming that they approve whatever we've decided, that decision will be made sometime early in 2023. You know, depending on the transition in the council, they take a little bit longer with that budget than they do with the multi-year budget. So, you know, we do need to decide it in the fall of this year. And so I think if we're going to engage the public, it needs to be in around, you know, the beginning of the fall or the end of the summer to get input that would be useful for that decision making.
Megan?
Maureen, would you mind just reading that one more time for me?
So part 2 of the motion in the April board meeting was that the board aggressively pursues assessment growth funding as available, directs LPS administration to develop a budget amendment for the 2023 budget year to add additional frontline positions to the LPS complement, and to present that budget amendment to the board at or before its September 2022 meeting.
Okay, so it actually doesn't, the motion we passed doesn't address a public participation meeting.
Actually, it does. There is more to that.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Also, that the board continues to assess on an ongoing basis the resourcing needs of the London Police Service, including public consultation to engage the public for feedback related to the LPS budget through the business planning process. So we specify there that it's through the business planning process.
Yeah.
But this amendment is not, am I correct, Deputy Chief McIntyre? The amendment for the assessment growth is not necessarily tied in with the business planning process, even though we've included in the motion the public consultation with the amendment and not with the previous clause, which was the 52 officers. Is that correct?
Yeah, part is correct, Chair, through you. So I think what Jesse's referring to is, so we have 1 year remaining in this current budget cycle. That's 2023. This September, we can go to City Council with an amendment to the last year of this current budget cycle. Now, moving forward, the strategic business planning process and that budget, they are aligned starting in 2024, 4 years out. So if we're going to add 52 people, what does that look like? How do we spread out those 52 people? One, starting in 2023, and then yes, in 2024 and moving forward. So there's 2 pieces: baseline budget, which would be an amendment to our 2023 budget, and then additionally assessment growth funding. So a couple options will be, as we table this, and we'll work with Annalisa and City Finance and our team here, will be to say, okay, how much can we stretch that assessment growth funding envelope? And then if it's stretched large enough, would we even need to make an amendment to our baseline 2023 operational budget? I don't have the answers for you right now. We'll make a proposal in September, but hopefully that helps you delineate that.
Okay, thank you. Megan, go ahead.
Thank you. That helps, except it doesn't really address for me this public participation. So I'm just wondering if Chief Williams could just address for me, when is it the best time to engage in public participation? And is it intended that the public participation that you had foreseen engaging with was not just specific to the new police officers, but also just specific to public engagement that is routinely done?
Right. So, yeah, great question. So when I think of the public feedback or public consultation, I was thinking about longer term strategies, not just budget, but what should the police service be focusing on over the next 4 years? What are the priorities? And I already know what they're going to be, because it's public safety, it's traffic safety, it's all those things. So very important. So it's sort of the long-term strategy about what should be contained within our business plan and how the budget will fuel those objectives. Okay, so now the board, so that's what I think of public consultation. Now the board may, and I think it's been done in the past, may do a separate session to collect feedback specific to the budget. And it might be what Councillor Helmer was talking about and Susan. So the option is just don't do public consultation and go forward with Tricia's schedule for the new business plan and all the consultation associated with that. But the other option is the board may wish to, in the early September, receive a draft from us, which will contain budget amendments for 2023 only. Mm-hmm. And you could open up the public board meeting. I would have to go through in camera first. Open up the public board meeting in September for feedback on whatever it is we put forward. that option is there. To do anything further, it's absolutely within the board's purview to do more further consultations, but it's going to be really difficult given the timeframes that the city really has with relation to the budget. And I have to be honest with you, we're pursuing these positions and we need these positions. So I completely am receptive to public input, and it's important, and it's a necessary part of our operations, and you know, we'll never say no to it. But this 2023, like Trish pointed out, it's a sliver of the bigger plan, right? So we're not asking for 52 officers in September. We're
Right.
probably going to ask for, you know, a portion thereof, either through the baseline budget or assessment growth, different process for assessment growth as well, right? So I don't know if I'm clear on that at all, but I mean, maybe open up the public session in September for feedback.
So I would then thank you for that, and I would then propose that there be that that the board plans for public feedback in early September after, or that, sorry, that the board receive the information from administration to assist with the public feedback in early September, which will be held at a public board meeting. Does that reflect what you just said to me, Chief?
That's certainly an option, and it seems like the simplest option given the timeframes. You just have to give some thought to logistics, public meeting, and how that's going to be managed if we're in the hybrid.
Yeah, and I sort of feel like it brings everybody on into the same place, which is important. I think that the board will be in the same place with respect to public consultation. But that's, so I would, before I forget it, like to table that motion.
So I just want to say that the regularly scheduled board meeting is September 15th. The chief had said early September. Would you be open to, in your motion, considering another extra board meeting in September to fit in with that early September timeline?
So what I meant by that, Chair, was, or Maureen, was.
I'm the chair. I am the chair.
Are you the chair? You are the chair, right? Okay. Yeah, you are. No, what I meant by that story is we will provide the board with the information in early September, so you can digest it, and you know, there might be some back and forth in advance of the regular board meeting. It will be really tough to get a board meeting in early September.
Okay,
A
thank you.
public meeting in early September. I just know the schedules.
Thank you for that clarification, because I just wrote down early September, so I just wanted, okay. So Megan, you're tabling that. That's good. Are you finished with your remarks? Because
I'm sorry, I'll unmute, or I will.
oh, no, it's fine. No. You weren't bugging me. I just wanted to make sure you were done. Okay, Ali, now I'll go to you.
Yeah, I think from the time that I raised my hand to all that's been discussed since then, I think I probably have some greater clarity on maybe a path forward here. My only question is maybe one of like a historical question. Have we in the past ever had dedicated public input or consultations on a separate line item budget or an amendment? Like what I'm trying to kind of conceptualize is there's an amendment that was voted on last meeting. Obviously, to Jesse's point, no decision's been made on that. Right, there's a report that's going to be coming to us in the fall. What I'm trying to kind of delineate is, okay, we have kind of established processes in place, and now we have this amendment. Is there precedent, and not that we're bound by the precedent, but where we actually have public feedback, public input on a specific line item kind of amendment that's before the board, or is this kind of an anomaly as to past practice there? I don't know if anybody, maybe Susan or anybody else that kind of has more history with the board can maybe provide feedback on that. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go to the chair of the board.
So as in my tenure, not specifically consultations on budget amendments, but we have certainly had public consultations on specific issues, which I think is a the same thing. So we've done public consultations extensively when we were doing the sexual assault policy. We had public consultations when we were setting up the anti-racism advisory panel and the mental health advisory panel. So we have done them on different issues. So, and I think the same principles would apply. And it sounds like it wouldn't even be as extensive, as those were quite extensive. And this sounds like, and based on Megan's motion, which I would support, would be sort of a one-time public meeting, just get some of that feedback in place. I do have a couple of comments, but I wanted to answer that specific question, so you can come back.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead, Ali.
Thanks. Appreciate that clarification, Susan. And so that kind of answers part of my question. And so what I'm struggling with, and by the way, I think I'm supportive of Megan's recommendation as well. But what I'm struggling with is, this isn't what you were talking about, where it's a separate standalone policy, Susan, where we're talking about it, right? This is a part of a larger budgetary conversation. It's one facet of that conversation. And so for me, I'm trying to reconcile why this has merit for independent public input on as one line item of a larger budgetary discussion, right? And so I may defer to you or Jesse or others that have more history in terms of providing that clarity there to me and why that's kind of differentiated there. But again, I say that leaning towards supporting Megan's motion there, but any context would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. I'm going to go to you, Jesse. I saw your hand up.
I would say we might be on the verge of overthinking this issue. We've had a couple multi-year budgets now, and when we switched to multi-year budget process, the number of opportunities for the public to weigh in about the budgets, either the city budget or the various budgets of the boards and commissions, including the police, has changed. And it's not actually common for LPS to come forward with an amendment to the multi-year budget. I think this would in fact be the first one where you'd have an amendment coming through. That does happen with other boards and commissions, and there's a process for that. So for example, when minimum wage was changed by the province, and that affected a whole bunch of boards, they had to come forward with amendments to say, okay, we're having cost pressures from this legislative change. We need more money to cover these things off. And LPS just hasn't done that. In the past, we used to pass budgets every year, and we would have a public process about, people could weigh in about the budget. We'd make a recommendation to council, and so it's actually pretty normal to have a discussion every year about the budget. When we did the multi-year budget, we did have one of these public meetings where we heard from the public. And I think if we're going to change that budget, isn't it obvious that we would do the same thing, which is we should have a public meeting where people could weigh in about the changes to the budget. Now, in my experience, regardless of whether there's one amendment or people will talk about the whole budget, they'll come forward and they'll weigh in about everything they think about whatever budget they're interested in and not necessarily limit themselves to the amendment. That's just the nature, I think, of engaging the public about the budget. Is there's an opportunity to talk about it, they may come forward and want to talk about the overall thing, even though there's a very specific amendment that's being proposed. So, we have a budget, like a finance and administration committee. I'm the chair of that committee. I mean, this conversation is wonderful, but my intention would be to have a meeting where we talk about the budget amendment, right? Like, that seems very straightforward, but that's what we would do. And sometimes lots of people turn out for it. Sometimes they don't. Not many people came to talk about the multi-year budget when we had the public discussion last time. I thought more people would turn out. They didn't. And so I think it's just an opportunity we should provide to people, make sure they know they can weigh in on it. If they think that the amendment is great, they can tell us. If they think that it's not good, they could tell us. If they think it should be more or less, I just think it's a good practice to engage the public when we're talking about changing the budget for any board or commission, including the police. So I don't know. I don't know that we really need to make a decision even on what to do about the budget amendment. Like, we do have a budget committee that deals with that stuff, and I know we have a governance committee where we're talking about it now, but it seems like it's kind of maybe a little bit in the wrong forum. But I'm fine with it if you want to make a decision now about when that happens. My expectation would have to be sometime in September, because the budget amendment won't be available then. We do need to make a decision relatively quickly because we have to meet the city timeline for submitting the budget amendments. And so I would expect there'd be either a committee meeting or the full board meeting where we are hearing from the public in September.
Thanks, Jesse. Ali? Good.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. One last thing. So if we're leaning that way further to what Megan and Jesse were saying, and that we're doing it in September, so just that I have clarity of thought here, the chief will then bring a report to or provide us with a report early in September in advance of our September 15th meeting. We'll consider it, and then we're going to have a portion of that September 15th meeting dedicated to public input, or are we having a standalone meeting sometime there? My understanding was September 15th, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that before I vote. Thank you.
Yeah, so I asked if we would have a separate meeting, and Megan and the chief both, it was explained that it wasn't necessary. And, but the chief did say that he would give us the report in early September. So that seems to me prior to the September 15th meeting. Jen?
I just want to clarify that, like, would that be the report that would be going on the agenda for the September meeting? So I'd get it, you know, a week or half a week before the meeting. Is that what you mean, Chief? Or are you speaking about something different?
No, it would essentially be the budget amendment with the justification. So that would be, usually you'd get it a week earlier, which is the 8th. I think we try to get it to you a bit sooner than that. So it would be the amendment.
Okay, great. If there's no further discussion, I just want to say that I also support Megan's motion. And I'm glad Jesse clarified the part about the 4-year budget, because what I would have said was, and I totally forgot that the 4-year budget cycle is actually very new. We've only done 2 at City Council. And so prior to that, yeah, there would have been an annual budget and public engagement around that and all of those things. I was going to say amendments to the budget are not common, so there isn't a precedent either for or against public consultation, and that's why the amendments haven't been common, because we've been following that 4-year budget cycle. So I totally agree that giving the public an opportunity to, at least to the best of our ability, make the public aware that this is happening. And it is difficult to make people get engaged, but we have to provide the opportunity. I do also want to say that, you know, people are wary whenever it comes to talking about budget and money, and oh, everybody's going to take this opportunity to come out against, but that's not necessarily the case. As a city councilor, and as we know on this board, we hear from people very regularly on the challenges that our frontline officers and the police service in general are facing with the long queues and the wait times and things like that. So it's an opportunity for the London Police Service and the police board to tell the story of what is going on at the police service, what the challenges are. And this is one way. A possible amendment is one way to address some of those challenges. It's not going to fix everything, and it's certainly not going to fix anything overnight or quickly. But I do think that this is an opportunity, knowing that there are just as many fiscal hawks out there who don't want to see any increase to the property tax levy. And on the other side, I think there is a growing number of people that recognize that policing costs money. We are a lean service, and there are issues that we're facing right now with frontline officers. So public consultations go both ways. It's a way to hear from the public, and it's also a way for us to tell the story of what's going on here right now. So those are my 2 cents. There's a motion that's been put on the floor by Megan Walker. Did you second that, Susan? Yeah, okay. And if there's no further discussion, I'll call the vote on that. Okay, I'm seeing no hands, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That motion carries, Jen. I think that brings us to the end. It is ironic that we've gone past our adjournment time, which was 10 minutes ago. Ironic, because we're going to have a discussion later on about these kinds of matters going over time, or not having enough time in the public session, not needing the time that we've set aside. So
sorry, Chair, there was the uniform issue, but if you want for timing, maybe we could put that into the full board public.
Did I miss
just
that? I'm so
because
sorry. Yes, I did miss that. Thank you for pointing that out, Susan. We missed that. I missed that. So, Jen, can we put that to the public session of the full board? Do you want to move that, Susan, that get moved there? Okay. And do I have a second for that? That is the name on the uniform thing, seconded by Megan Walker. Thank you. I'll call the vote on that matter be referred to the public session of the full board. All those in favor? Awesome. That motion carries. Now I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Walker, Megan Walker, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Ali Jabbar. I just wanted to play fair and give you the same title.
I mean, to be fair, Councillor Walker and Councillor Shabar were a thing at one point, just different time, right? So
There you go. Excellent. So all those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. See you right away. Bye.